Hello crafty friends, I'm Lien from Studio Kato, but I'm so happy to be here on the Syberia Designs YouTube channel today. I'm going to make a card with a really dramatic dark background, and I'm going to share some tips along the way to make that design happen. I'm using the 4U stamp set. This is a really large layering stamp set and it's got a lot of potential. I'm barely scratching the surface here, but you can see the images on the back, and there are actually images inside as well, a layering guide to show you how to layer your stamps. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you want to use all 3 layers, you obviously don't have to. You can skip layers if you want for a different look. But if you want to use 3 base layers of the flower, you start with the largest one in the lightest color, and then layer all the other layers on top of it with darker shades. Now, I didn't know which composition I was going to go with for my card, so I am stamping both flowers twice. I only end up using 2, but I have 2 left over for another project now. I'm using some light teals for the flowers because I didn't want to go too dark with my flowers since I knew I was going to use a darker background. So I wanted them to stand out against that background. I'm using a mix of Pink Fresh Studio and Conquer the 9th inks, and yeah, just see which colors you have, layer them on top of each other, and see if you like it. If you don't have that many ink colors, you can stamp one twice for a darker shade. That also works. I happen to have a pretty good selection of teals now, so I figured I'd use 3 different inks. Do keep in mind that ink colors, especially dye inks, do dry back a little bit once they've stamped and once they've been dried. For the leaves, there's only really 1 layer and an outline layer, so I did want to add a little bit of shading there, so I am stamping, or I'm inking up that stamp partially with a darker ink for a second stamping. Sorry about that. I'm inking up the base of each leaf, and it's not perfect, but again, it will dry back and it will dry a lot less splotchy, so it will be a really nice transition between the shadows and the lights on those leaves. There are actually 2 additional layers to the flowers. There's one with little dots or splatter, and then there's one with these little things. I love them, and I thought they'd go great with the outline of the leaf. So I embossed those in a copper embossing powder, and I'm heat setting that as well. Once that's done, I can die cut them with the coordinating dies, but since I was going to put these on a darker background, I don't want that die cut edge or that margin of white around them. It can be great on some cards, but for this one, I just didn't want it. So what I do then is I take a dark alcohol marker that sort of matches the color of my cardstock, and I just go over those white edges. For my sentiments, I am using the Birthday Wishes stamp set by Syberia Designs, and these also have coordinating dies, which is always very, very lovely for sentiment stamps, I think. I use them a lot more if they have coordinating dies, whereas for most other images, I could probably cut them out myself. But sentiments, I'm not even going to start cutting them out myself. I'm stamping that with Versamark ink, and I am going to emboss that in the same copper embossing powder. This is by Wow, and then I can also heat set this with the Wow embossing tool as well. This is the dark cardstock I will be using for my background, so I already chose a cardstock color. I had to if I wanted to add that coloring to the edges of the flowers as well. So that's what I use to stamp my sentiments on, to have that match the background too. I layered those up. I added 3 additional layers of cardstock behind these sentiments. You could do it 2, but this cardstock, this particular colored cardstock, isn't the thickest. So I also added dimension to the leaves this way. I am not bothering with the flowers, I'm just putting foam tape behind those, but those stems are pretty delicate here, so I wanted to add dimension to them, and I figured this would be the easiest way to do that, instead of fussing around with really small pieces of foam tape. And once all of that is layered up, I am going to put that aside and work on my background. I'm going to use a stencil to spice up that dark background. Now, if you want to add interest to your darker backgrounds, you either have to use pigment inks, which can layer lighter inks onto darker cardstock. That would work great. That could give a really interesting look. I wanted to go for a bit more of a tone-on-tone look, so I actually chose a cardstock that is slightly lighter than my darkest blue ink. So I'm inking this Modern Stripe stencil, which is also from Syberia Designs, up with Conquer the Ninth Midnight ink. And I'm even going to add some black pigment ink around the edges. This stencil doesn't go completely around or completely over an A2 size card. It leaves a really small margin all the way around, which is a really fun look for a one-layer card, I think. But for this one, I thought it would look a little better if I added some black pigment ink around the edges to make that non-stenciled edge disappear. It also gives a really nice halo effect, and if the lightest part is in the center, your eye is automatically going to be drawn to the center. It's a great way to direct the eye of the viewer of your card. I'm adding some copper splatter as well. I'm matching that copper all the way in this card. I really like matching my metallics to not add too much color there. Copper and midnight blue also work great together. I love that. Well, midnight blue, just really dark blue, is perfect. I never managed to get the bigger splatter when I want them, so I just add those in by drawing them on. And then I'm going to figure out the arrangement of my card. So I'm not gluing anything down at this point. I'm just seeing where I want everything to be put. I thought the first one was, or the first arrangement I came up with was pretty good. I normally never stick with my first arrangement, but this time I did. So I'm gluing those leaves in place. And as I said, I'm putting some foam tape behind the flowers themselves. You can definitely stack those or the coordinating die cuts for extra dimension as well. It will add more stability. I just thought foam tape would be a little bit quicker in this case. The sentiments I did fuss around with the placement a little bit, but in the end I chose to overlap the happy with the stems of the flowers just a bit, and then I'm also going to overlap the birthday with the happy. Interlocking things like that in your design is going to make everything seem like it's meant to go together. It's a great way to make your arrangement work if you just overlap things just a tiny bit. Separate pieces in a design are always more difficult to work with than pieces that are interlocking somewhere. Then to really make this card shine, I'm adding a couple of embellishments. I only add embellishments around the parts I want highlighted. I'm not going to put them in that empty spot on the top right. I'm just going to add them around my flower and around the sentiment. Now, my camera has a tendency to overexpose once I try to show the card off, but I'm going to add a photo in the end to show you the card in its full glory. So I hope you like this card. I hope you liked the video. If you did, make sure to leave a thumbs up on this video. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Do you like creating cards with dark backgrounds? I think they look very dramatic, and if you want to send traditionally masculine cards, this is a great way to make them a little bit more masculine, to go for darker colors. I don't really believe in sending masculine cards myself. I just think a card is a card. It goes for anyone. But yeah, if you're struggling with that, this might be a good way to add a masculine touch to a flower image. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, if you did, leave your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more videos in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.